Hello, everybody, and welcome to a quick interlude at the beginning of this episode for episode 164 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. My name is Gavin, specifically post-recording Gavin, because I wanted to give you guys a quick administration science update, because I haven't done one of those in a few episodes, and especially because this one is kind of a doozy. So, in the past day or so, at the time I'm recording this and doing the editing and stuff, the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, has announced that they are shutting down their research, like scientific research arm, which is pretty bad. If you, like me, enjoy things like clean air and clean water. Those are just things that I'm pretty fond of myself personally. And so this is, I think it's about 1,500 scientists that they have on staff who do research and development. And this is doing things like coming up with new ways to treat pollution, protecting our air and water from pollution, as well as coming up with new ways to detect pollution so that we can better understand, what kind of pollution there is, how to best treat it, and then developing new, better ways to treat it once they detect it. And so that's pretty bad because, like I mentioned, I like clean air and clean water. And if you've been paying attention to the podcast over the last few episodes, you'll know that I am a recent new parent. And I sure would like my daughter to have clean air and water. So in theory, this could be, in a normal time, covered by, if they wanted to cut this, sure, but then increase some grants to universities or other, like, scientific firms, like private industry things with grants or other kinds of things like that. But as we've discussed several times in these administration science updates, the administration is just, absolutely taking the hammer to those. So that will not be the case. So if not having clean air and clean water is something that bothers you, like it does me, please give your Congress people, your congressman or woman or your senator a call, and let them know that this is something that sucks. Especially because this is going to be really awful, particularly in places near where I live in, like, the deep coal country of Pennsylvania, because the environment in some areas around here is just absolutely demolished by, the area's history as coal mines and stuff, because they didn't properly take care of it as they were mining it, and now the people that live there have to deal with those consequences now. And the EPA is a big supporter of these communities, and keeping them as safe and healthy as possible. And that's going to be significantly diminished. So this is something that hits both, metaphorically and also literally physically close to home for me. And so, yeah, if, as a personal favor, if you could send an email or call your congressperson, I would greatly appreciate it. There'll be a link to a news article from the AP down below for, more information about it. And the bad administration news just keeps on coming, because also in the past day or so, Congress cut a ton of funding for PBS. Normally, that's not something in and of itself that we would talk about on this show in these sort of administration science updates, but it is particularly relevant to this episode since PBS is where you can watch this Walking with Dinosaurs 2025 here in the States. So we talk about PBS a little bit in this episode, and if you enjoy, especially like kids programming on PBS, again, as I sort of just mentioned, I am a new first-time parent. Thinking back to all the time I spent watching various shows on PBS when I was a kid, it just kind of makes me sad that my daughter may or may not have those things. Because I want to say it was $1 billion, which sounds like a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of the federal government, that's literally nothing. So, again, just because that happened to be, fairly relevant to today's episode, I thought I'd mention that as well. Oh, also, one more quick thing, completely unrelated to the last thing. I tried doing something different with my microphone when we recorded this episode. to try to make it catch both Liz and I a little better. So it make the audio quality a little bit worse. We're going to sound a little more hollow than you're used to on this podcast. So sorry about that, but it is something I know about. It won't happen in the future, ideally. So sorry. But yeah, with that happy news, on to the episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 164 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. My name is Gavin. Mike and Fia are weirdly the ones on leave for this last episode and this episode. So with me is my wonderful wife, Liz.
Hey, friends.
Yeah, so we're back here again. Just like last episode, talking about Walking with Dinosaurs, but the new one this time. So yeah, if you didn't listen to last episode, we talked about, we rewatched, or I guess in the case of Liz, watched for the first time.
Correct.
Walking with Dinosaurs 1999. And now we are going to talk a bit about Walking with Dinosaurs 2025. So if spoilers for a documentary are important to you, spoilers, I guess. I don't know who would care about spoilers for Walking with Dinosaurs, but I'm sure there are people.
Listen, we all thought that baby dinosaur was going to make it.
That spoilers, none of them make it. So, yeah. So first things first, I want to give a big shout out to PBS. So, like I said at the beginning of the last one, you can watch that on the Internet Archive. There'll be a link for that in the show notes of that episode. Probably this episode too, to be honest. But Walking with Dinosaurs 2025 can be, you can watch it for free with a PBS app. We were able to just get it on our smart TV. I also got it on my phone. PBS is publicly funded. And the spending bill that just got passed, I think, cuts their budget quite a bit. So if you can support your local PBS in any way, please do so. Anywho, so before we get into like episode by episode, what are your general thoughts?
So, I mean, it was a great documentary. I think overall it was nice 6 episodes, pretty short and sweet. Mm-hmm. With that being said, I liked the 1999 version. I liked having the puppets. I liked the...
That was definitely something missing from this one, I think.
I mean, I did enjoy not being nauseous from the really poor quality CGI from the first one, but there was just a little bit something missing, I felt like. A little personality.
Yeah, and so I think my biggest thing that I didn't really like in this one versus the old one is that there wasn't any kind of cohesion from episode to episode. So, like, in the 1999, it started with the very first dinosaurs in, like, the mid-Triassic, and then each episode got closer to the extinction, where in the last episode, at the end of it, was the end Cretaceous mass extinction. And this one, 5 of the 6 episodes were in the Cretaceous, and the other one was in the Jurassic. So there was no Triassic. There was no even, like, early Jurassic stuff. It was all Cretaceous and pretty much all North America. There was one episode that was in Northern Africa with Spinosaurus, and then another episode that was, this was the Jurassic one, that was in Iberia. So, like, what is today Portugal and Spain. But other than that, there was no South America, no Australia, no Asia, and that kind of...
No ocean.
No ocean, yeah, that was another thing. This one was exclusively dinosaurs. There were pterosaurs a bit, but, like, in the 1999 series, there was a whole episode basically just about marine reptiles, and a whole episode just about pterosaurs. This one, pterosaurs were, like, around, but they were never the focus of the episode. And then something else that I noticed, I kind of clocked it about halfway through, sort of like I did with the 1999, where they never show you a pterosaur taking off. But I noticed it about halfway through, and then didn't say anything to Liz until we finished. But they don't even show a bird anywhere. Not even in, like...
Well, in the flashbacks, there's technically birds, like, in the current Like when they
right.
do the flash forwards to current times.
Yeah, and that's something else we'll talk about in just a sec. But there's, in the, scenes during the Cretaceous or the Jurassic, no birds.
Yeah, no.
Not even because they filmed just like, in the original, it's mostly, I'm sure there are a couple full CGI scenes, but mostly it's, B-roll footage of like real world landscapes that they put dinosaurs in. But it's like, I'm positive they recorded some birds in that footage that they then took out. And so, I don't know why you couldn't have just left them in, but after I noticed it, I looked for it, and there were no birds anywhere.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the type of thing my husband fixates on.
Yeah, because it's like, if the oldest, like chronologically oldest episode is mid-Jurassic, there should have been birds in all of these episodes.
Well, I mean, to be honest, where last time we talked about how cool it was that they showed different insects and different animals that were around at the same time, just as not necessarily characters, but just even in like
part
filmography.
Part of the ecology.
Yeah, there was really almost zero of that. I think they had like one or two examples where they showed like a spider or maybe a dragonfly.
Something that we noticed in the first episode. So they start us off in the late Cretaceous with T-Rex, and there's a baby T-Rex chasing a dragonfly, and in the 1999 series, they would have done that with a real dragonfly. Just like went out and got footage of a real dragonfly, and then superimposed the CGI of the T-Rex trying to eat it. But no, it was a CGI dragonfly, and both of us, as soon as we saw that, we're like,
oh man,
I like this a lot less.
Yeah.
They did later, in a couple later episodes, they did get some real footage in there. There was also seemingly, I don't remember which episode, probably the Spinosaurus one, where we think it might have been a real crocodilian, like alligator footage.
Yeah.
Or something. It was underwater, so it's always a little harder to tell in water.
But it did look very realistic. Like, it did look very CGI.
Yeah. But yeah, and so I think the other big change that I liked quite a lot was that this wasn't purely what if you just time traveled, a film crew back in time, where it did, throughout the episode, go back and forth between modern paleontologists going out and doing field work and finding these fossils. And it used that to sort of explain how we know the thing that it's about to show us in the scenes where the dinosaurs actually were, in the Cretaceous or the Jurassic. And I liked that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I had a couple complaints about it, but in general, I liked that, individual episode format better.
Yeah, I think for, science communication, I think it was a huge benefit for people that don't have experience.
I think the episodes were also quite a bit longer.
Really?
If I'm thinking about it.
I didn't feel like they were. I just felt like they were broken up differently because of the back and forth.
Yeah, it didn't feel longer, but I think each of the original 99 series were give or take half an hour, whereas these ones were 50 minutes, I think, ballpark. That's just my recollection, so that might be fake news. But it didn't feel longer.
No.
Because they constantly were going back and forth. The main gripe that I had about the modern paleontologist scenes, there's a couple, slightly cringy lines where it's like, that's not how paleontologists would talk to each other. They're definitely doing that for camera, but that's not something a normal person would
pick up on.
Recognize.
Yeah.
The thing that actually bothered me, though, was that they seemingly brought out a lot of fossils, from their collection space out into the field. And I don't like that.
But you understand why they did it.
I do. But especially, for example, the one that I think bothers me the most is the Spinosaurus, which I think of all the episodes had the least of it, from what I can remember. But there's not a lot of Spinosaurus fossils, so the ones that we have need to be kept extremely well taken care of. And bringing them out into the Morocco desert, where in museum collection spaces, everything is constantly temperature regulated, humidity regulated, and they were seemingly like way out in the desert in Morocco, and just the change in temperature from night to day can be like 50, 60 degrees at least. Mm-hmm. And so that's just not good for the fossil. If it's only there for a short time, it's not a huge deal. But I think it's just an unnecessary risk. And at one point, they do specify that the thing that they're holding is a cast. And I'm like, okay, because they specify it for this one, that to me implies that the rest were not.
Hard to say.
Yeah.
Without speaking to someone about it, it's just a lot of projections.
Yeah, but again, that's just my gripe where I'm like, I don't love that this was done, especially if it's part of like a research collection. I bring fossils out when we do like our community fossil day and stuff from like our teaching collection, but it's a teaching collection. We're not using those for research. Mm-hmm. The point of them is to be educational to the public. And so, yeah, that was one thing where I'm like, I don't love this, but, these people are also professionals. They talk to people who, I think I'd only briefly met one of them. I think I just, like, very briefly talked to Jim Kirkland at SVP a couple years ago. But I knew of a good chunk of them. Every time they'd show a new person, Liz would be like, do you know that person?
Well, I would be like, have you heard of them?
Yeah. And I'd say a solid chunk of them I have heard of. But, yeah, so with that, I think we'll just sort of get a little bit into an episode by episode, unless you had other
sounds great.
Thoughts. Yeah, so first episode, like I said, they start us off, weirdly, we didn't know what the episode was going to be, because my first note is paleontologist jump scare. I did not know going into this that they were going to be showing paleontologists.
Yeah, because, it was a completely new format.
Yeah, and it's like, I could have, looked a little into it, because this had been out in the UK for a little while. But I was like, I just want to go into it, not reading the internet's thoughts, which apparently are fairly negative from what I've been able to see. Granted, the negative voices are always the loudest. Who cares? But, yeah, so my first note was just paleontologist jump scare. The CGI, definitely, obviously, it's been 26 years. It definitely looks better. The lighting, I thought, was also always kind of just like a little off with the CGI stuff. So the quality of it looked a lot better, obviously, and the accuracy for like our modern understanding is obviously a lot better. But nothing, I don't think, ever looked quite like it belonged.
Oh, yeah, no, like it was never really convincing either.
Yeah.
But that's the double-edged sword of the old 1999 version never looked real either. It was just more entertaining.
Yeah. That's true. It was definitely the 99 version was much more memeable. The puppets were very memeable.
I go back every time where I do believe there was artistry in CGI. Like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But the artistry and the puppetry and creating of the puppets to me is like just so much more tangible and outstanding that I got to give more props to that.
And we'll talk about it a little bit when we get there, but there was one point where they do mention, at the end of each episode, they do kind of like a bonus sort of like making of segment almost. And they do kind of use puppets in one portion. We'll talk about it. Most of the fossils that they showed, unless they were like actively in the ground, I'm like, okay, that's definitely from the lab because there's no sediment on it at all.
Clean.
That's a very clean fossil. And I'm like, sometimes they do pop out just like that, but that's pretty uncommon. But yeah, they'd spend a lot of time at the beginning of the first episode really talking about the field crew and like talking to them, and it really just makes the science feel a lot more tangible. So like as a science communication tool, each individual episode, I think, is better in that aspect than the old ones. But yes, we talked to this crew. They're from the North Carolina Museum or State Museum of Natural History. Very famous, very good natural history museum. I've never been there, but I know a couple people who have worked there. They have a lot of really great stuff. And then we flash back to 66 million years ago, Montana. And so basically it starts off in the exact same time and roughly place that the 1999 series ended. And it shows it much lusher and greener than the 99 series. Right. Because in that, I remember thinking, I'm like, man, they're really just showing this place as like hell on earth. And I'm like, that's not our understanding of it. Even at the time, I don't think it was. But here, it was much more like a temperate, not quite rainforest, but like delta environment, like the Hell Creek Formation, if people are familiar. The quote, just Liz, I miss the puppets. The first time we see a dinosaur in the entire show, Liz just says, I miss the puppets.
Listen, I don't bring much to the table in the form of this podcast. I know who I am and what my limitations are, but yeah, that was basically my commentary throughout the
They did keep some of like the practical effects side of it. So at one point, something is like moving around some eggs. I think it was one of the baby T-Rexes. And that was like a real egg puppet that was like being pulled on a string or something like that, that the T-Rex was playing with. And this is when we realize that it's not just, oh, they're talking to the paleontologist at the beginning. It goes back and forth throughout the entire episode. And so the sort of two main species that they talk about in this episode are obviously T-Rex and Triceratops, you know, the classic, you know, two big dinosaurs. And they actually go in and discuss the science that, like, even though this probably this shouldn't have been the case for, like, the population in the environment at the time, but the vast majority of Triceratops fossils that we have are from adults, which is kind of weird because you think, you know, part of evolution is that more babies are born than make it to adulthood. That's like step one of natural selection. And so you would think just sort of intuitively, well, there's a lot more babies, so there should be more fossils of babies, but that's just kind of not the case. And they kind of talk about that and break that down a little bit, which I think is really cool. They also did a decent job of sort of in between these like really famous, you know, T-Rex and Triceratops. The pterosaur that's here is one that I think after they said it, I was like, yeah, I guess I think I've heard of that, but it was a genus called Inferno Draco. And it looked really good.
I will say, I was not a dinosaur kid. Like, I could not tell you, you know, more than, like, maybe 5 or 6 dinosaur names, which is wild. But, with that being said, like, it was really cool seeing some of the different, like, more unknown dinosaurs. I feel like they did a good job on, like, touching more than just the, you know, the top 5.
Yeah, and I think they did a good job picking ones that, like, are still generally very familiar, so they didn't pick any, like, ones that are super out of left field, like Amargasaurus or something, which is a sauropod that was, like, all things considered, relatively small as far as sauropods went, but had these big spines all along its neck that we don't super know what it was used for, which I like it because it's a weirdo. Right. But I think it was smarter to pick things like in one of the later episodes, the main character is sort of Lusotitan, which is sort of more or less Brachiosaurus, just sort of across a bit of ocean. But the shape is very familiar.
Right, exactly.
So they did a good job of, like, showing the diversity while also saying, but this isn't the one you think. There are more of them that look like this.
Agreed.
And then we talk about it in a little bit of a later episode. I don't remember exactly which one. But they did an excellent job of making the pterosaurs look weird and just kind of goofy. Like when they're walking around on the ground and stuff.
I mean, I didn't like notice anything particular, but...
Well, I don't remember it. At one point, there's a pterosaur trying to eat something. Oh, in the Spinosaurus episode. They're, like, walking through the forest. It's like a dad Spinosaurus leading his babies. And they're sort of being hunted by this big pterosaur.
Yeah, no, you're right. No, now that you bring it up, yeah.
And they did a good job because pterosaurs, like, when they're flying, they look pretty much how you would expect something like that to look. But when they're walking around on the ground, they look so strange.
Well, yeah, that's where I made the comment about, like, Slender Man.
Yeah. Well, this one in particular, we'll talk about that in just a sec. Looking to see if in my thoughts of if we had any other thoughts for the T-Rex episode. This was something that I also really liked. At one point they mentioned, so in the Cretaceous there was this big ocean that separated North America into like an eastern half and a western half. The western half is called Laramidia, and they specifically mention, because there's a baby T-Rex or a baby Triceratops trying to kind of make it on its own, and they specifically mentioned there's about 20,000 T-Rex on Laramidia, which is like a direct reference to a paper that came out probably while all of this was being written and in production, that basically was like, okay, T-Rex was probably this big based on certain, bone measurements and things. It probably had a metabolism that needed roughly this many calories per day. How many of them could fit, in this place? And just doing, sort of apex predator, food chain ecology analysis. And that was roughly what the researchers came up with. Was at any given time, there's probably about 20,000 adult Tyrannosaurus Rex all across, Western North America. And I'm like, that is a direct reference to, like, recent research. That's really cool.
That's fantastic.
I liked that a lot. At one point, they show some researchers rappelling down a cliff.
Yes.
And I'm like, that seems a little extreme. I'm sure
some of them do.
But yeah, like, I'm sure that happens. But I'm like, oh, right out the gate, I like my job. I like what I do. That makes us look way cooler than we are.
Listen, I hate to break it to you. There probably are some paleontologists out there that are cooler.
Oh, for sure. There definitely are. There's a really cute scene between the baby Triceratops. It's basically trying to find a way to not die. And it finds an adult Triceratops. And it tries to just, like, be friends with it and hang out with it. And the adult is like, no, get away from me. Which is just very cute.
Yeah, it was definitely like, is this going to be like a cute Disney moment? And then, no.
There's also, they also do a good job going, back and forth between the dinosaurs and the researchers. They showed, like, a field camp, the, like, field station that they had set up. They had a 3D printer there, and they 3D printed a T-Rex brain. I'm like, I don't know who's bringing that out to their field station, but okay. But they also did a really good job of showing, other than that, how people use the, like, different modern research technologies and things. So for this one, they basically sent out a drone at night and used UV light to scan the ground looking for fossils, because depending on the exact, lithology and rocks and stuff of the area, fossils will shine under UV light. And so they just sent out a drone with UV light and a camera and looked for stuff that glowed. And that was really cool. In this episode, they also had some Edmontosaurus, and they also looked goofy in a way that I liked. I can't really explain it. They're kind of like just like big cows, but like their front arms just look so teeny tiny.
Yes.
They're also blue though.
We talked a lot about color after we finished the series.
Yeah, and I'm like, I like that they're showing dinosaurs as more colorful than just gray or green. But I'm like, there's not a lot in nature that's blue like that, unless it's something that's trying to be seen, like a peacock. So that's a curious choice. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Again, a little flash. A little, what's it called? Like, something over substance. Is it flash over substance? Is that what the saying is?
I'm not quite sure.
Oh, man.
Form over function?
No, that's not it. Excuse me, my Swiss cheese brain.
Yeah. They also showed the Edmontosaurus adults had a baby with them, and the Triceratops played with the baby quite a lot. That was very cute.
That was cute.
And that kind of thing happens occasionally in the real world, and I'm sure it would have happened with dinosaurs too. Whether it happened with these two species in particular, probably pretty impossible to say, but
yeah.
They show some coprolites fossils, and how we know that, like, they even said normally we can't tell what a particular coprolite comes from any particular species, but it's like, well, it's a big coprolite.
This one has a ton of bones
with
in it.
with bones in it. In this environment, there's really only one animal it could come from. It's probably some T-Rex poop that we've got here. So that was pretty cool. And then, of course, as always, you need to end it with a big fight between a T-Rex and a Triceratops. Obviously.
Give the people what they want.
Yeah. And so they talk a lot more, and they showed it in the 99 series, but it was with Torosaurus, which Triceratops and Torosaurus may or may not be the same species. It's a whole thing.
Don't even get them started, ladies and gentlemen.
But they didn't ever talk about it in the 99 series, but the Torosaurus did have eye spots on their frills. But here they actually talked about it and said that, they showed the fossils, that there's lots of veins and blood vessels and things in the frill fossils of Triceratops. So they probably could flush it with blood to make it change colors and things. And they showed these big eye spots. I think they intentionally made it look kind of like the same colors as, like, the T-Rex face. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you caught that or not, but...
I didn't. To me, it just reminded me of, like, a butterfly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and so that's still speculative, and you even asked me if there's any evidence for them having the eye spots, and not really. Not for, like, eye spots in particular, but for them being able to flush it and change it colors, that's pretty confident.
Okay.
It would have been nice if they had commented on that
the liberties,
bit of speculation, though, but oh well. I also thought the T-Rex versus Triceratops fight scene went on quite long. It was probably a solid 5 minutes.
I agree, but I thought that was just me being a negative Nancy.
No, it definitely was pretty long. But the entire episode, they're like, "Oh, will the baby survive?" And it's like, actually, no, that was the opposite. Went down. It was from the beginning. You're like, this baby, like they tell you, the narrator says, "This baby dies."
Yeah, this baby was 3 years old, or approximately 3 years old, and then it goes through, like, their life, and then you the whole time you're waiting, you're like, okay, is this how the baby dies? No,
they never. Yeah, they never show you.
Because they're not sure, which I appreciate.
Yeah. Presumably, I have in my notes here, adult saves the baby, so the Triceratops wins. In the end, he's probably what kills the baby. Adult males are not particularly known to tolerate other males' children around them. Lions in particular are very famous for that. But then in sort of the bonus section, so there's the main episode is probably give or take 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then there's like a 5-ish minute bonus thing. And in this, they talk a lot about the extinction event in particular. They talk about the iridium layer. They actually go to a place where you can see it. And they use UV light, again, to detect the different elements in the rock. And it's a really good discussion of how the extinction happened. So that was, I liked that a lot.
Yeah, the only thing I missed about the previous format from the 1999 version is that when they would finish an episode, it would kind of review, like, where things were filmed. Like, they had different, like, the, not subtitles, help me out here.
Credits?
Credits. Like, the credits, like, there was more information kind of on the credits, where here it just, like, went into, like, going back to the scientists that were researching in that area and talking more with them, which is fantastic.
So that was in the credits. We just skipped to the next episode before it happened. Right. Yeah.
My bad.
Episode 2. We'll go through it a little quicker. That one there was a lot of just our general thoughts wrapped in that episode, but this one is about Spinosaurus. So this is takes place in Morocco. The main scientist here, his name is Nazar Ibrahim. He's sort of like the Spinosaurus guy. Spinosaurus has been very controversial and memeable over the past probably 10 years or so, probably a little longer, just because we've learned so much new stuff about it that it changes a lot. Like, our reconstructions of it change. But I think they did a really good job also making Spinosaurus look goofy.
Yes. When you were talking about how things like walked weird, I was like, I know we made jokes about the Spinosaurus walking weird.
Because Spinosaurus looks so goofy. in like a realistic way though.
Yeah,
like there are some animals there's a lot of animals that look goofy. And so we're still in the Cretaceous period, but we're about 35 million years before the last episode. And this is something that, like, again, I didn't look ahead. Even while we were watching them, I didn't look ahead at, like, the episode titles. And so for the first couple episodes, they go back, give or take 30 million years in time before, like, from the previous one. And then they kind of just jump back. So, like, this is about 100 million years or so ago. My next note was just goofy Spinosaurus, 10 out of 10, no notes. At one point, one of the baby Spinosaurus honks, and it sounds exactly like a goose.
It did. And
that rules. I loved that. Here...
I think Gavin even paused the show and was like, did you hear that honk?
I did. I rewound it. Here I have in my notes here, we actually get a real toad and real dragonfly footage.
Okay. And this was the only one that had, like, any, like, underwater footage.
Yes.
And it wasn't ocean footage, but it was still...
Right, a lot of river...
Yeah.
Yeah. Real alligator footage, potentially, too.
Unknown, but possible. Yeah.
Yeah. They, let's see, go through... again, these folks use some drones as well, which in a place like the desert, where it's probably just a lot easier if you're, like, no... ballpark what you're looking for, or if you're looking for something particular, you can hang out in some shade and fly a drone around. That's just a good use of your time and resources. So they fly it around looking for some trackways, using LiDAR, seemingly, which is really cool. There's a lot of really good and, like, fairly cheap drones that can do that now, and that's really good, like I said, just showing how we use modern technology to do this field work now. They could have found better trackways, though. I remember Liz was like, I can't tell what that is. I can't tell that that's a footprint, even with them pointing it out.
Yeah, like, I think even just, like, a post-animation, like, you know, outline just would have been helpful. Yeah.
Part of the reason is that I think they were some kind of sauropod, which is basically just, like, their footprints are basically circular.
Yeah.
So, they don't.
But they were talking about, like, oh, here's, like, a claw mark or something. Like, they were trying to identify different things. I'm like, that is just a blob to me.
I don't see it. Yeah.
Was it the rickshaw?
Rorschach.
Yes, thank you.
But yeah, this is one of the few times where they show something without, like, giving it a name. They just call them Titanosaurs instead of whatever genus it is. Probably because it's an unnamed species, but, like, then just show something else. Because, like, they weren't really important. It didn't really show them eating it or anything, or trying to hunt it or anything. It was kind of weird. Something I really liked that the paleontologists did in this episode was that they did a lot of good, like, over-the-shoulder shots of, like, the field workers doing, like, field drawings, which is a really important skill that I'm pretty bad at. But it is a really important field skill that,
we
like,
had that in a few episodes, actually.
Yeah, this was the one that I noticed it the most in, though. And I liked that a lot, because that is something that they don't tell you when you start trying to be a paleontologist, is that you're probably going to want to practice drawing a little bit.
An art class would do you some good.
It would definitely do you some good. Yeah, here we get to the scene of the pterosaur sort of stalking, because it's basically this dad Spinosaurus, with, I think, starts with 4 babies.
Yeah, 3 or 4.
And there's a scene where he's walking with them through a forest, basically from river to river. They're going to this, like, spawning ground of Onchopristis, this big saw shark sort of animal that lived in this environment. And they're walking at night through the forest, and they're being stalked on the ground by a pterosaur called Alonka. And this is where Liz thought it looked like Slender Man.
could have been from a horror movie.
It really could have.
It could be repurposed, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. It basically showed this pterosaur just like walking on all fours through the woods, and
it's dark and it's gloomy. And
it's kind of foggy. Yeah. And so you hear it like snap a twig or something, and the parent Spinosaurus like turns around, and you can see at one point if you know, I think it zooms in on it at one point, but it's like the Alanka is pretending to be a tree.
Yep.
It's just like standing next to some other trees, just like standing up straight and not moving.
I could have watched an entire show or movie just about this interaction.
It was very good. And I like that a lot because especially some of these really big pterosaurs, they probably weren't hunting in the air. Mm-hmm. Like, this is how Alanka and Hatzegopteryx and Quetzalcoatlus, this is probably how they hunted most of their food. And it works. It gets one of the babies. Spoilers.
What?
And yeah, I just thought this whole scene was like goofy and funny, but also very, very realistic. They have a really good discussion of what the sale of Spinosaurus was probably used for. That has been a lot of debate over the years, especially before we got more evidence for dinosaurs being, confidently warm-blooded. It was like, oh, this is just for thermoregulation. And these days it's like, yeah, probably not as much. More for display, making yourself look bigger to other things. At one point they get attacked by an adult Carcharodontosaurus, which is another big theropod that lives in its environment. And so it tries to look bigger, for that, and also to fight off another Spinosaurus.
But don't forget when the baby Spinosaurus also just gets stuck in seaweed.
That is true. One of the babies
there are other things trying to kill these animals other than other animals.
Yeah. At one point, the main character dad, Spinosaurus, tries to like bully another one away from a fishing spot, but like maybe they just didn't want to put in a bunch of other Spinosaurus in the scene. There was a whole lot of open river. Right there. So it tries to bully this one away from a spot, but you could have just went down the river a little bit.
Gavin's just looking at us. This is so unrealistic. There's plenty of space for all of us.
Well, it dies.
Yeah.
The main dad...
Was it worth it?
No. The main dad Spinosaurus dies because of that. Spoilers. They also, going back to the paleontologists, at one point they use electrical tape to stabilize a fossil in the field.
It caught my attention, and I didn't say anything about it.
No, we talked about it.
But it wasn't until you brought it up. I was like, okay, because I also, pulled
yeah,
it up and thought...
I had to rewind it, because I was like, wait, is that electrical tape?
Yes, it was just plain black electrical tape.
Never seen that before. It's certainly a choice. I would not recommend that, personally. But what do I know? That guy's been a paleontologist longer than I have, so what do I know? I have another Liz quote in here. Evidence that the males did the work.
Yeah, I was like, this just seems like a artistic choice. Is that they had a father being the primary caregiver of these animals, like mom dipped or maybe was killed. They never explain. They never state why the dad is investing in the offspring. But I was like, was there any actual evidence of that, or is that just started?
No, and it's basically impossible to say with any particular fossil species.
No, for sure.
But there are modern species where the males do a lot of the work. So not specifically with Spinosaurus, but
I was just curious.
Yeah. And then they also make a brief mention of Spinosaurus being unique in that it's potentially the only known aquatic dinosaur, or like semi-aquatic dinosaur, which is pretty cool. Yeah. They go like the entire episode without saying that, even though they show it in water a bunch of times. And sort of the bonus thing at the end for this episode was talking about how they filmed the shots in a real environment.
That was cool.
Yeah, and so this was the one time where I'm like, they did kind of use the puppets, where they made like a foam head, like to scale, of a Spinosaurus,
took it to a pool.
Yeah, they took it to a pool. That was just to, like, get the weight right. And they made it, like, green screen, but, like, blue, which in certain lighting is easier to replace than green screen. But they made it blue and had, like, a real person swimming behind it in most of the scenes where the Spinosaurus is, like, above water swimming. And, like, so all the ripples and things that you see in the water are real. So that just helped them, like, make it look more realistic, because realistic water is a hard thing to animate. So they're like, we're just not going to do it. We're just going to make a semi-puppet and then key in the Spinosaurus, like, 3D model over top of that.
I really enjoyed watching that.
Yeah, so that was a really good one. So they probably did that in a lot of the different scenes and just didn't tell us about it. So they did, you know, just as we're talking about paleontologists using new technology, that's probably kind of what they're doing throughout this entire series on the back end that the animators do. Let's see. Episode 3. This one is about Gastonia, which is a type of ankylosaur. Again, this is another 30-ish million years, now sort of in the early Cretaceous. It's focused on a Gastonia named George, which was really cute.
They did have some, like, fantastic names.
Yes.
George was one of my favorites, and then there was another one later, another boy name.
Old Grande?
No.
We'll
get there, I'm sure.
Yeah. Mainly about Gastonia, but this takes place in Utah. So the main sort of paleontologist here is Jim Kirkland. And they, you know, talk a bit about him, follow him doing stuff in the field. One of the other sort of main characters of the episode is Utah Raptor, which, compared to the 99 series, is very well done here. It shows them hunting in packs, which there's not a lot of evidence that they did. Which, that's just hard behavior to capture to begin with. But they also show some good subtle sexual dimorphism between the male that has, like, a bright sort of red head colors with his feathers, the females that don't. And they also just did a really good job making them very bird-like.
Yes.
All of their movements are very, very bird-like.
In fact, I found them very unsettling.
Yeah, which they would have been.
Like, and that comes from me, like, you know, as someone that studies, like, modern animals and everything. It gave me an ick in a way that I was like, ooh, that's, like, a little too real, and I don't like it.
I really liked the choice of Gastonia over something like Ankylosaurus that is more popular and that has, like, the clubby tail, because these ones, they're armored and stuff just like Ankylosaurus, but they don't have a club at the end of the tail. That's sort of, there's two different groups within that group where some do, some don't. But I just like that because Gastonia is cool and has a lot of cool things about it, but it's not as popular. This had a lot of really great in situ fossils. So, like, good shots of, like, the fossils, like, in place. I think this was probably one of the best, like, paleontology episodes of all of them. They have a really good discussion about osteoderms, all the different bones in the skin that make up the armor of Gastonia, which is really cool. They also show us some lab scenes, which they hadn't up to this point. So they take us to part of the lab, which is really cool. They show us a cast of a Utah Raptor brain, like a natural cast made. Not one from the lab, but at one point they find it and then they just, like, flip it over. And it's like, that's a Utah Raptor brain.
And they were really excited about it.
They were very excited.
I loved seeing that because I think people honestly forget that when you're in a profession that you love, like, we're so dorky about it. Like, us, like, scientists and everything, that when you find a discovery, even if it's something that you've seen, like, 100 times, if it's something that you love and you think is cool, you're going to get excited every single time you see it. And that was really, I don't know, it was special seeing everyone, like, get excited about that.
Yeah, like my note for this one literally just says cast of a Utah Raptor brain. That's cool as hell. The next scene is so basically George, the Gastonia, finds this like other group of males because he gets kicked out. You know, like very much like elephants, where it's like after a certain age, the males will get kicked out of the herd. And sometimes, depending on the species, the males will sort of form a group with each other until they get old enough to be able to fully defend themselves. And so by this point, a few of George's adopted brothers have died. I think it's just him and one or two others. Mm-hmm. But at one point they show one of the brothers licking a bunch of like salt or like soil for minerals. And they specifically say like, oh, he's literally just eating mud to help build up their armor, because that's a lot of bone that they need a lot of minerals for. So it's like, yeah, that makes sense. I don't think we have great evidence for that, but it's something that obviously makes a lot of sense.
And animals still do that in modern day. You know, that's not something that is out of the realm of possibility by any means.
Unfortunately, though, while that one is doing that, some Utah Raptors come and flip that brother on its back like a turtle.
I don't know why it's so funny when you're like, flip that brother on his back like a turtle.
Well, yeah, they just flip him right over.
The episode is called like The Brotherhood or something.
Band of Brothers.
Band of Brothers, that's right. Also an excellent movie. Highly recommend.
I haven't seen it. Don't look at me like that.
Okay.
Let's see.
You know what I'm thinking of? Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou? I also haven't seen Band of Brothers. I'm sorry.
Girl.
You can leave that in.
Okay. One thing that kind of bothered me, and this is just a me thing, they showed the same shot of Utah Raptor running through the forest 5 or 6 times, where it's like just a headshot, and it is obviously the exact same clip. They show it like 5 or 6 times throughout the episode. And I'm like, you couldn't have put in a different model for it, because I don't even think they switch it between the male and the female. Mm-hmm. It's the exact same. And I'm like, if they show it again, I might lose my mind.
I didn't pick up on that at all.
Let's see. George eventually does kill one of the Utah Raptors with his big tail. And then all the other ones run away. So George at least isn't eaten. But George dies in a forest fire. Yeah. That's how George dies.
Yeah. Him and the remaining brothers, they all get kind of smoked out.
Yeah. And there's a really good conversation here about how, like, the conditions of it, like, the animal's death impacts the preservation quality. Yes. So some of the Utah Raptors, basically there's the big forest fire, and the ones that George didn't kill are basically trapped between
quicksand.
Fire on one side, the 4 or 5 Gastonia that are left, and quicksand. But they don't realize it's quicksand, so they try to run over the quicksand and get stuck. And that makes for excellent fossils.
You guys can't see it, but Gavin just made like the chef's kiss.
Yes.
Italian hand.
Meanwhile, George gets some smoke inhalation. That's how him and all his brothers die, which makes less good fossils. But they talked quite a bit about pollen, and like how they could tell that there were like forest fires around this time. Is that pollen preserves very well. It fossilizes very, very well.
Which that was really interesting to me. Like, that definitely caught my attention when one of the researchers was like putting up slides and showing like what plants this would have been from and when that existed, and that was really cool.
Yeah, and it's palynology, which is the study of pollen, is a bit of like a black box to me. I never like took a class on that or anything. But pollen is everywhere. Obviously, think about like your car in the summer or the spring. And so it makes sense that it would have been back then too, especially because this was before flowering plants, when everything was wind pollinated. And they just throw out their pollen. And so they, it's hard to like you have to really know what you're doing to differentiate between modern pollen contamination and actual fossilized pollen. But they showed this, microscope slides of this ancient pollen with like bits of charcoal and stuff in it, and they were like, yeah, this with this much charcoal, this definitely is from like the remnants of a forest fire, which was really cool. And they also showed a really cool sort of the bonus episode part now. They showed some cool older footage from, because Utah raptor is like a relatively newish species, all things considered.
Okay.
Like in terms of like when it was named. Mm-hmm. Whereas like T-Rex was in like 1902 or something. Utah raptor was from like the early to mid 90s. So I think that's probably why they went out of their way to feature it in the original one.
Right. It was fresh.
Yeah. So and Jim Kirkland was the one who named it. He was the researcher that did that. Mm-hmm. And so they show some cool older footage, because the stuff that they show in the lab is of this big, like several ton block of rocks that has like a number of Utah raptor in it. And they show some really cool like home video type footage, probably from Jim Kirkland, of that block being excavated and being brought to the lab from like 2005-ish is what they said. Mm-hmm. I just thought that was really cool.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed that as well.
Yeah, they also have a cool conversation about just like extinctions of just the large predators in North America between the late Jurassic and early Cretaceous, because this takes place like sort of right at the beginning of the Cretaceous. So they're like, yeah, we don't get things like Allosaurus and the big predators like that of the Jurassic, and so that's potentially why Utah raptor was able to get so big. It's because there were no other big predators. So why wouldn't a dromaeosaur that's normally relatively small get to be so big?
And where in the 1999 documentary, it was broken up where we were getting closer and closer to the extinctions. On this, like, we never had like an extinction episode.
No. So
it was never like touched upon unless like a researcher like mentioned it like that.
Yeah. Yeah, we never see the stereotype, asteroid hitting Earth, that we always see in every dinosaur documentary. Yeah, and so this is getting into the episode 4 now. This is when I start to get a little bit frustrated with the timing, like the time of it, because like I said, episode from 1 to 2 and then 2 to 3, each one is about 30 million years back in time. Now we're moved way up to 71 million years ago in Western Canada. So we're just kind of bouncing all over the place now at this point without any kind of rhyme or reason time-wise. Let's see. This one mainly focuses on Albertosaurus. So this is sort of a smaller type of tyrannosaur. Not small, but smaller than T-Rex. And they show them as being fuzzy, which I thought was really, really cool. It says that possibly due to colder climate, this one I think focuses not as much as the next one, but somewhat on like colder climate stuff. They also show them as being social, which I think I had heard before. I think there's more evidence for that than some other species, but not, probably quite as much as they imply throughout the episode.
I feel like all 6 episodes, they really emphasized, like, I'm not sure if it was just for story plotline or creativity of, like, wanting to show the animals, like, interacting with each other, but there was just, like, a lot of touching between the dinosaurs.
There was.
A lot of kind of, like, grooming behaviors, a lot of, like, snuggling behaviors. I felt like it was almost a little overdone.
Which, in some groups, I think, especially the theropods, I think that would make sense. Given that birds do that all the time.
Right.
With ones like I think it would be unusual. I know we already kind of talked about it with the Triceratops and the Edmontosaurus babies, or like juveniles playing, and they even like slept together. That seems weird.
Or just like even like when it was like the Band of Brothers episode, or
that's true.
Like they were like very much.
They were constantly like shouldering each other, and not in like a get out of my way, I'm trying to eat way, in like an affection way.
That, or like what you might do if you were on a sports team.
Yes.
You know, like kind of like just like pushing your buddy around, like kind of giving him a hard time. Like,
yeah, there was a lot of that.
Yeah.
And I think some of that is to sort of make them more of a character.
Right, yeah.
And I'm sure part of it also is wanting to sort of subvert the expectation that, like, a lot of people do still see dinosaurs as slow, you know, dumb things, which a lot of them, that, I will say Gastonian's a bad example to use for that because they probably were slow and fairly dumb. But
yeah, it was just like a lot of kind of, I don't know, a lot of emotional and like physical connection that I wasn't exactly buying what they were selling. You know, it wasn't like, oh,
so some parts were more believable than others for sure. But yeah, so this like pack of Albertosaurus was like 8 of them. And I'm like, these are big animals. They would need so much food to have 8 of them, even if their metabolisms were slower than like that of like lions or something, which they probably were a bit slower, but not far off. But they're also several times the size of a lion. But yeah, that seems like a lot to be sustainable in a group. They showed a lot of really cool herding stuff in this episode. Something I really liked is that they made a lot of, and not just for like sexual dimorphism reasons, but just like individual variation reasons. Like they show like a drone style shot of a herd of Edmontosaurus, and they're all sorts of different colors. These ones were not blue. These ones were like greenish to tan-ish, but they were all sorts of different colors, you know, in that sort of spectrum. And I just thought that was a good touch that you don't see a lot of.
I agree.
Although this is, I think, when they start doing the
Gender.
bad gender thing, the bad type of sexual dimorphism, where the main character is not like the boss of the pack, just like a female in the pack of Albertosaurus, and her face is sort of pink. So like she's kind of fuzzy, and they're all kind of brownish, fuzzy, but their faces are bare, and hers is pink, and she has a mate, his is blue. And they do that for the rest of the episodes, where boys are blue, girls are pink.
Yep. In case you weren't sure how to tell them apart.
Exactly. Back to the paleontologists, they have a scene finding some of the pterosaur bones, and they briefly mention birds. And this is what I put in my notes. I haven't seen a bird yet, at all. And I would not see one. And the pterosaurs that they have here are another one that I had not heard of, called Cryodraken. There's a couple of them that they're sort of seen scavenging a big, washed-up, dead ammonite. And it was big.
I liked that scene.
Yeah. And, like, Cryodraken, it is an Asdarchid, so it's the same group as, like, Quetzalcoatlus. It wasn't quite as big as Quetzalcoatlus, but this was a big ammonite. This was probably at least 6 feet across.
Yeah.
They only showed it from
briefly, from an angle.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, like, I think they could have spent a lot more time on that ammonite. I also just love ammonites.
Yeah.
You know, I think we could have gotten way more out of that, but that's just because of my own personal interest.
Yep. But yeah, and they show this because the pack of Albertosaurus are kind of starving, basically. So they do end up grabbing and eating one of the pterosaurs. Let's see. We have a little more lab time. This time, a jaw that very clearly has plaster on it. Or no, I'm sorry. More fossils from the lab is my note. But yeah, this one is very clearly not from the dig site because part of it is filled in with plaster to stabilize it. Which, again, very common thing to do in the lab. Not a common thing to do, like, in the moment in the field.
But we understand, like, they're trying to do documentary. They're trying to show field work, lab work, and yeah. You gotta give them some grace.
Yeah. And to be fair, what they brought this out for was to show that most Albertosaurus skull fossils have tooth marks on them from other Albertosaurus. And it's if you're not finding one out in the field, you need to bring one from home. So I get it.
Because the main character for this one was
she was like
Rose.
pretty low. Yeah, Rose was her name. So she was pretty low in the pecking order.
Yeah, and so at one point the matriarch kind of kicks her butt and puts her in her place.
Yeah.
You know, it shows her getting a little bit scarred and deformed, but she continues to live on.
Yeah. And so, and you actually, I have another good Liz quote in here, which is a good question. So Liz asked, couldn't that just be from one eating it after it died? Like, if one dies, wouldn't they just cannibalize it? Which, like...
Was there any evidence of...
like, healing.
Yeah.
Which they don't address that in the show, but yes.
Mm-hmm. I think they do in a later episode.
Yes, but not with the Albertosaurus, yeah. They talk a little bit about Albertosaurus's tiny baby arms. And then
I hated this scene.
And the reason that they talk about them is because, sort of to comfort her after she just got beat up by the pack leader, they basically, the male and the female, basically sort of stand side by side and like, they don't like hold hands.
No, they like just like rub nubs.
With it kind of like grooming almost.
It was
with
creepy.
With their little arms.
Unnecessary.
Which that's not an unreasonable assumption to make, I don't think.
I didn't like watching it.
Why?
I don't know. It was unsettling.
Okay.
It was I don't know. You guys watch it, you let me know what you think.
They have a really good conversation here about ontogenetic, like, niche partitioning within the pack, where the oldest one, the one in charge, is, like, bigger and heavier and so can't really chase down as much. But that's what, like, Rose and her, like, mate are good for, is they're the ones running into, like, this herd of Edmontosaurus.
And then the matriarch is the one that, like, brings it down.
Right. So I think that was a really good conversation. Then my next note is just a quote that says, "Run, Simba, and never return." So the Rose's mate gets killed by an Edmontosaurus, like panicking in the herd. He gets like run over because they're like 2 or 3 times his size.
It was exactly a scene out of Lion King.
Yeah.
Was that also the episode that they showed like the sunset? And it was just like the sunset from
Lion King?
Yeah, like
it
the sunrise.
It might have been.
Like, it was almost like on the nose.
I think at one point they even compare, like earlier in the episode, compare the herds of Edmontosaurus to wildebeest. I think so. So I think that they knew what they were doing. They kind of end the episode with some like of the bigger fossils that the field crew found being airlifted back to the lab, which again is cool. They didn't have like any like new science or like cool fieldwork techniques or anything really done in this episode. So I think this was their meeting their quota.
They're niche, they're special.
Which is definitely something that is done for some of these bigger fossils, especially if you're from like a pretty well-funded institution.
And I also enjoyed watching. In different episodes, not just this one, but like where they were applying the casts and doing that out in the field and how it is messy.
Like the field jackets is what she's referring to. So with like the plaster and burlap is usually what's used. Sometimes they use Tyvek, depending on that is kind of a internal paleontological debate, is whether it's better to use Tyvek or burlap, or it just kind of depends what you like personally, but. Then sort of the end section here, the bonus segment, is mostly about the Edmontosaurus. Apparently they've never found an adult and a baby Edmontosaurus together, which I found kind of strange, considering that we generally think they were herd animals. I just think that's kind of strange. They talk about how adult Edmontosaurus have like forward-facing eyes, but the juveniles have side-facing eyes, which I thought was really cool. I hadn't heard that before. And they basically hypothesized that like at a point, the juveniles left the herd and then came back as adults. So like their eyes are side-facing to be able to scan for predators better because they're alone. and then their eyes need to be more forward-facing when they join the herd so that they can not run into each other, I think, as I understand it.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it was like they alluded that the young ones would go live like in the forest and like more foliaged areas, and then they would rejoin once they were bigger.
All right, episode 5. We'll cruise through the last couple episodes here, because episode 5 was very similar to episode 4, because it's still in Alberta, Canada, and only 2 million years apart from the last episode. I just have why in my notes for this one, because it's not even like they were saving money, like with the same researchers or anything like that. Like, it was a different research crew. But so I it's just a choice that I don't understand. And so for this one, they're focusing on the like northward migration of a large herd of Pachyrhinosaurus. Again, focusing on a baby whose name was Albie.
That is the one that I loved the name.
Even though Liz said he looked like a testicle.
Oh my god, and I stand by it.
He did. He had very wrinkly skin.
Who in the world, like, made some artistic choices there? Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it starts off just like getting us to care about Albie. And again, this is another one where they say right from the beginning, these fossils are from a give or take 1-year-old. So we're like, okay, so we know Albie doesn't make it.
And they say like these fossils belong to
right from the beginning,
a dinosaur that we're going to call Albie, and then it takes you back to when Albie was alive.
Yeah, so it's like right from the get-go, we're like, okay, Albie's not getting to adulthood.
Is it horrible that I was very confused?
I like it.
I liked it, but also I was devastated, but also I liked it.
Yeah. But yeah, so to get us to care about Albie from the beginning, he wanders off from Mom in the herd, almost gets eaten by another pterosaur.
I think this was my least favorite episode.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And again, this was, I think, the only other case where they didn't give the thing a specific name. They just called it an Asdarkid pterosaur. But I'm like, you're only 2 million years away from the last episode, my guy. You're in the same place. You could have just used Cryodraken from the last episode. It was probably around.
Yeah, but if they're just trying to show, like, a variety.
Right, but then you use something that has a name.
Fair.
But yeah, they also, sort of again, and I put this in my notes well before it actually comes up in the episode, because they do talk about it. But I was still on the, like, oh, they're doing a lot of, like, individual variation stuff. The horns on Pachyrhinosaurus, so they have, like, not a horn, like, right on the nose like Triceratops does. They have, like, one kind of, like, in between the nose and the eyes, sort of. And then, they have, like, a gap at, like, the top of their frill in the middle that has some horns on it. Mm-hmm. And if you sort of look around the herd, none of them are the same. They're all kind of different, crooked, and facing different ways. And I was like, that's a good thing of detail. And they actually bring up later, that's potentially how they recognized each other. It's from, like, differences in the frill. Like, at one point, Albie gets lost from his mom.
Which was, that was kind of like my beef with the episode, was that, you know, he ends up kind of getting left behind or goes too forward.
Yeah, two big males get into a fight, and he's like, oh, I want to see that, because he's a baby, he's curious, wants to see stuff. And he, like, wanders off and gets separated from Mom.
But they're showing thousands, or at least hundreds, of these dinosaurs, and then it's like, okay, well, Albie just, like, stays there as, like, I gotta wait for my mom.
That's true. I think it shows, like, a little bit of a time lapse where he just stays there.
It's dark.
It is dark. And then Mom just, like, kind of out of nowhere comes lumbering up, and he's like, oh, Mom!
And I'm like, bullshit. Sorry.
But yeah, so.
But other than Albie looking like a testicle and me not believing that his mother would wait for his little testicle butt, I did really like the adults, like how they were, not projected, portrayed. Thank you.
Let's see. My note here, going back to like the males fighting, it's just males fighting for sex. Why do men always do this? But they do that to sort of show, like some paleopathology. I think that was sort of their technology or like new stuff quota for this episode. Was that at one point it shows like one of the males like seemingly winning, beating the other one. And then it goes to the fossils and shows, like, a rib that clearly had been, like, badly broken, like, in life, not from being a fossil. But it shows that it healed. And then it cuts back to the male who got, knocked down, getting back up again, and then going back and beating the other one, seemingly killing him. And then my next note was, Albie wanders off like an idiot kid and lost his mom. Yeah, Mom eventually finds Albie. She 100% would have left him rather than leaving the herd. Later on, to obviously introduce another villain to the episode to potentially kill Albie. This time is Gorgosaurus, which is another type of tyrannosaur that was in the area at this time, very closely related to Albertosaurus. I want to say they used the exact same 3D model. It looked exactly the same. But they show them making a rubber field cast of the footprints to like confirm IDs. That was pretty cool. At one point, the herd is traveling through the woods, and they're like sleeping. Albie hears a sound in the woods while everyone else is sleeping, goes to investigate like an idiot. Like he's just a curious like baby. I get that, but like my guy.
I'm sorry. This dinosaur deserved to die.
Yeah. I was in Edmontosaurus all along. 3rd episode that has been featured in. And basically, they're like, yeah, these Edmontosaurus are really loud eaters, which attracts Gorgosaurus. And the Gorgosaurus kill an Edmontosaurus. And it shows a shot of, like, blood dripping from a real leaf.
That was so unnecessary.
It was very unnecessary. Like, it looked like it should have been from a horror movie, where it was, like, a real leaf. And they showed, like, with blood dripping from it. Like, no CGI at all. And I'm like, that's just really unnecessary.
And, yeah, especially when, like, the whole episode has been about, like, this dumb little kid.
Yeah.
And, like, dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. And then all of a sudden, like, absolutely gruesome.
Then they spend some time talking about fossil plants, which we haven't really talked about all that much in the series yet. They talk a lot, specifically about flowering plants. And they show some, like, broadleaf fossils, like, sort of like a maple or oak type fossil. And that's sort of, like, the draw for Pachyrhinosaurus to move north, during the summer. But it was so weird in that they talk about that specifically, like, specifically mentioning the flowering plants. And then they show some, like, scenes of the dinosaurs as they're marching north. Not a flowering plant to be seen. I'm like, again, that's just something, maybe CGI that in. I don't know. But I'm like, it's relatively hard to find an environment in the world today without flowering plants. So I don't know what the disconnect there was. Let's see. Here, again, they do some more cool, technology stuff where they use LiDAR to sort of map the site, the fossil site, as well as using, like, the traditional drawings and quadrants. So they basically, instead of taking fossils out, they would, like, remove sediment from the top of them, and then they'd, like, LiDAR scan everything to make, like, a 3D model map of the fossil site, which is really cool.
It was very cool.
And what all this has been building up to, because we talk about this giant herd this entire episode, is that at this one individual site, they estimate there's probably tens of thousands of individual Pachyrhinosaurus in this assemblage, which is
insane,
incredible. And they basically, based on the lithology, think that it was probably a flood. that caused all of it. They do a really good job of showing all of the geological evidence around these fossils that kind of shows that and supports it. Although that flood that they showed looked enormous.
It was biblical.
Like, too big. Considering it wasn't from, like, a dam breaking or anything. It was just from rain. And I'm like, that's a bit much. Like, I don't doubt that it could have buried this whole herd from a flash flood. That seemed like a lot.
They only had a minute to, demonstrate.
And then they sort of close it out saying that they found some evidence of, like, embryonic or, like, very, very young hatchling Pachyrhinosaurus about 30 miles away from the site at a different one. They say these might have been, the survivors of the flood who went on to nest, but I'm like, there's absolutely no way to know that at all. Like, fossils that are only, like, a couple inches in depth away from one another could have been thousands or millions of years apart. So 30 miles away, these were almost certainly several thousands at least years apart in time. But it tells a good story.
Exactly.
And then the bonus for this episode was our cats are trying to get into the room, if you can hear that. I don't know. Yeah, the bonus is, like, in some lab scenes, and they take some CT scanning of Pachyrhinosaurus brains.
Which was very cool.
Yeah, and they talk about the differences in the brains of, like, herding versus non-herding animals, and that parts of the brain that are, like, associated with, like, social behavior and pattern recognition are bigger in, say, like, Pachyrhinosaurus versus maybe Triceratops that we think probably herded less.
Again, trying to justify Albie recognizing his mother and his mother recognizing him.
Well, I mean, that's a real thing, though.
Yeah, but that mom was not coming back for that baby. Which sounds awful, seeing as that, like, I'm literally, like, days away from getting birth and being like, that's BS.
Yeah. All right.
I would come looking for you, kid.
Last episode. So we are now our only episode that is not in the Cretaceous. So this is about Lusatitan, which is not one that I had heard of before this. But yeah, about 150 million years ago. This is modern Iberia, so Portugal and Spain, which was an island at the time. And the only marine reptile we see in this entire show is a dead, washed-up pliosaur being eaten by Torvosaurus, which is, again, another type of tyrannosaur. That's another thing that I didn't really notice until just now. The only theropods that we see are tyrannosaurs or Utahraptor. Weird. But the main character is a male old Lusatitan named Old Grande, which was really funny because the narrator's British. And the first handful of times that he said the name, I thought he was calling him Old Grant. He said Old Grandy.
Yeah.
Is how he pronounced it. I'm like, oh, man.
The names, like, really did kill me.
And so he's basically trying to mate and just following a female down the beach. Let's see. The scenes, I think this episode seemed a little rushed to me. So the scenes of Lusatitan eating were very weird. So in the very first episode, I mentioned how they still did, like, the practical effects with the egg, like a real puppet of an egg just being pulled on a string or something. This time, it was like, whenever they showed one of the Lusatitan eating, its mouth would, like, disappear, like, obscured by some branches, and then just reappear.
And it was still closed, no leaves missing, nothing being chewed.
Like, nothing in its mouth. The branches moved a bit, and it's like, it almost like its mouth was scissors, where it took an exact clean cut, and then just swallowed it whole, which, like...
I think that's giving more credit than what it even deserves.
Right. It just looked like not
we ran out of time.
Great CGI, yeah. But, like, the dinosaurs themselves, I thought, looked really good. This was another one of the boy is blue, girl is pink.
He also had, like, a really derpy, like, they had him smiling.
That's true. He smiled a lot. Which, like, I think it is just kind of how their faces look. Truthfully,
Okay.
I do think that, but it definitely looked like he was smiling in a number of shots, especially toward the end.
Yeah, when he eventually,
gets the girl.
Or does he?
Wow. Let's see. The paleontologists find another Lucidtitan a few miles away, and again talk about it as if these two individuals might have interacted.
Like one was the cause of the other's downfall, type of thing.
No, just they. I think they were saying that like, the one that they had been working with, Old Grande, mm-hmm. and then the other one I think was supposed to be the other male.
Yeah.
Right, but it's like, okay, you said it's miles away, and it's like if you found two like bodies, like recently dead bodies, miles away from each other, that's not unreasonable. But it's miles away, and also we're 150 million years removed from the situation. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I
saying or even implying that these animals might have interacted with each other is like astronomically very unlikely. Again, my notes: boys are always blue, girls always pink/red. Old Grande gets sucker punched by a rival male and gets hurt. The paleontologists do some more rappelling down cliffs to get to fossils. These ones are footprints this time. And basically they do all this to measure some like difference in gait length between like left side and right side of the trackway. And they do this to sort of justify that like, oh, he might have been from like a limping individual. Like the gait on one side was I think 4 inches or so shorter than on the other side. And I'm like, okay, that sounds like a lot, but the gait is like 7 feet long. Mm-hmm. Like 4 inches over 7 feet. That's a bit of an assumption.
I guess it depends on other records of footprints.
Yeah,
like,
that's
consistency.
True. But yeah, so I think they do a good job of saying how easy it is for an animal this big to get hurt, though.
Yes.
Because, like I said, when Old Grande gets sort of sucker punched, he basically just falls down to one knee, and they're like, this could kill him. And I'm like, yeah.
And he stayed there for, like, days.
Yeah, no, he couldn't get up for a few days.
And the whole time I'm thinking, like, oh my god, I would just, like, want a raptor to come and eat me.
Yeah, so he basically has this, like, standoff with a Torvosaurus on the beach, where it's literally, it tries to come eat him, and he can still raise his neck up and everything. And so he, yells at the Torvosaurus, and the Torvosaurus is like, okay, and just literally plops. Just sits right down and waits for him.
Wait.
Yeah. And it's like, over the course of a couple of days, you see him kind of like shuffle up on the beach. And he does try to get him once. But he, Old Grande wakes up and, hits him with his neck and stuff.
And then somehow magically catches up with the female and the other male.
Yeah. So, like, he gets up, he heals, and it seems like almost instantly his leg is more or less back to normal, is the implication.
And they're, like, using elephants as, like, an example, but, like, the stomping behavior to find other individuals.
Yeah, so, like, they didn't say this, but it's called infrasound. So it's basically, they have really sensitive foot pads, and so they could basically feel each other walking, is really what it is. Or a lot of times with elephants, they make sounds like in their throat that are like too low frequency for us to hear, but kind of shake the ground, and they can kind of transmit it through their legs down into the ground, and they can kind of talk to each other from really long distances that way. And that's kind of the implication, but they didn't word it quite right. It almost seemed like he was doing like echolocation, where he was like stomping the ground.
Yeah, after having just been like dangerously injured
on one of his back legs.
He's going up on his back legs.
Yeah.
And front legs completely up and slamming them into the ground.
Yep. Our dog's in here.
Yeah, everyone's impatient now.
Yep. But yeah, so now he has to catch up to his lady and exact his revenge. Old Grande fights and kills the rival. They have a good discussion, I think, of the air sacs in the neck vertebrae of sauropods.
Yep. Because he was doing like a little dance for her. They were, like, doing like a courtship dance. And then he got a little too overzealous and, like, freaked her out. So he's like, wait, I have one more trick up my sleeve.
And unlike the one in Prehistoric Planet where there's, like, the little balls up the neck that go like, boom, 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 boom. This one, I think was much more realistic. Because in a lot of, I don't think I ever mentioned this, Lucititan is more or less the same as Brachiosaurus. So that's the type of sauropod we're talking about here. But they have the name of their larger group is called Macronaria. Okay. So big nose. Okay. And because the top of their head has this really big open space for their sinuses. Mm-hmm. And for a long time, that's why we thought their nostrils were, like, up at the top of their head. So, like, the ones in Jurassic Park, the nostrils are, like, way up above the eyes. But that's not really what we think anymore. That's why in this one, the nostrils are down by the mouth, where they probably were. But it has these big open space at the top of the head, and that's where the air sacs were. So he inflates little airbags on either side of his little dome head.
Oh, and that really got the female excited.
Oh, yeah, she loved that. And they mate. Yay. The dancing that he did, though, was really cute, I think. And, like, I think reasonably realistic.
Yeah. I mean, I did have a problem with it, other than the fact that I'm like, wasn't he just hurt? And he just traveled all this distance, and, like, I don't, just, like, the consistency with that. I'm like,
it was basically like he was just magically healed. Because even, like, during the fight with the other rival male, they mentioned the injury once. And then he's like, no, he wins because he has plot armor. And then in the bonus thing, they do a couple of weird things. The bonus thing was all about how similar dinosaurs from this time in North America and Iberia are. We have a lot of the same things. There's Allosaurus in both places, which was news to me. I didn't know there was Allosaurus outside of the U.S. Or outside of North America, anyway. I didn't know, like I said, I'd never heard of Lucititan, so I didn't know that it was that similar to Brachiosaurus, but there's Torvosaurus, Ceratosaurus, Stegosaurus, all in these places. And they talk about how there probably was some land bridges going on at this time as well, but they do some weird stuff. So they animate some Brachiosaurus just for this bonus episode. So, like, this is not, like, older Walking with Dinosaurs footage. This is a new, and I could even tell it was a new 3D model than the Lucititan one. Okay. And, like, that seems like a lot of work for this extra bonus thing that you don't use anywhere else in your show.
Yeah, but maybe they were going to, and then they had
to cut it. That's fair. That's true. I didn't think about that. But then when they're talking about Allosaurus, they use clips from the old Big Al Walking with Dinosaurs documentary of an Allosaurus and some Stegosaurus. And I'm like, that's a curious choice. I don't know why you would do that.
Because I liked it.
Well, yeah, I liked it because it was really out of left field and I didn't expect it. But I was like, I don't know why you would do that instead of just not having the footage. Because you could tell that it was from, like, 2002 or whenever Big Al came out. But yeah, that was just like a weird jump scare during the bonus thing. And then the series just ends. Like, in the 99 one, I'd say probably the last 20% of the last episode was talking about the extinction and talking about how the world has changed. Just, really quick stuff, nothing really in depth between, 66 million years ago to today. But it just ends.
It did leave almost like you were expecting more. Like, you wanted that little bit of closure.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know if they're planning to do another season of it or whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. I think I'd like to see them continue the trend, though, of, because with Walking with Dinosaurs is obviously the most popular one, but they also did Walking with, I don't remember if it was prehistoric monsters or just monsters, and Walking with Prehistoric Beasts. The monsters being the Paleozoic stuff, so before dinosaurs, and then beasts after the dinosaurs, mammals. I would love to see them redo those especially the one before the dinosaurs, because we have learned so much more since that was made between then and now.
Yeah, we'll see if PBS has it in the budget.
Well, BBC made this,
oh,
to be
that's
fair.
right,
Although
yeah.
BBC's always on the chopping block over across the pond, too. So, but yeah, so this was our... we said we wanted to keep this at an hour. That didn't happen. But yeah, so this has been our thoughts about Walking with Dinosaurs 1999 and 2025. Let us know all of your thoughts. And overall, I think they're both good. I think they both, like, have value.
Different strengths.
Yeah. But I don't regret watching both of them again.
Nope.
They're both good. So, but yeah. So let us know your thoughts next time. Hopefully, we'll see you in 2 weeks with I think Fia Takes the Wheel episode. Once again, an episode that's not my job, so I don't have to actually do any podcast things for like a month and a half, which is pretty great for me. But yeah.
You're pretty occupied.
I will be very occupied. But yeah, so this has been episode 164 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. My name is Gavin. That has been Liz. Hopefully Mike and Fia will be back with us in 2 weeks. And until then, take care, everybody. This episode of I Wish You Were Dead was written by Gavin Davidson and hosted by Gavin Davidson, Mike Bryson, and Fenella Campanino. It was sound edited and edited for YouTube by Gavin Davidson. Special thanks to former guests of the pod and to listeners like you.